Welcome to the Startup Grind.
It's part of a startup grind tradition. I would like to ask everybody to stand up as I introduce Cate. Stand up for that. All right, so Cate Dyer is the CEO and co-founder of StemExpress, and she started the StemExpress at the ripe old age of 31. She started with, I think, I don't know if it's an urban legend, but you started with $9,000 in your pocket. And she's been made a darling of Sac State. I actually drove past Sac State, and I saw Kate's picture on the electronic billboard. So I'd like to everyone give her a rousing round of applause. So, basically, the interview is basically broken into three areas. Talk a little bit about your background, and I'll talk more about StemExpress, and then maybe have some questions for, advice for general entrepreneurs. And then we'll take some questions from the audience. So first off, I'll just say, where are you from? What did your parents do?
So I was born in Long Beach, California, and I don't ever really consider myself from anywhere. We moved a lot when I was a child, so I lived all over the East Coast. My sister one time calculated we moved 17 times, usually out of state, before I was 16. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of moving, a lot of moving around. Yeah. So my mom, through most of my childhood, was an executive for KLM Airlines, and then my dad worked for Mercedes-Benz for about 25 years or so.
So was a Honda driver.
Yeah.
And what was your first job?
Oh gosh, my very first job. Well, let me think about this. I'm the youngest of four children, and I remember my sister, she wanted to get her kind of first job in this paper route, and it was in New York State we were living at the time, and it snowed, 6 months out of the year. So the very first night that she got this paper route, it snowed, and there was, tons of snow on the ground, so she refused to do it. And I said, well, I'll do it then, So I just kind of picked it up and went out in the snow, and my mom took me around, and I started doing this paper. I was probably 11, 10, something like that. I think that's the first job I can remember.
And then what did you want to do when you grew up?
For a long time, I was pretty pre-med focused. I worked in hospitals and worked in the emergency room for a long time. I wanted to be an ER physician. And, just loved helping people and trying to, improve patient care and so forth. So that was, for a long time, that was my passion.
And I think I read you were like an EMT for a while?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was down in Santa Barbara for a number of years, I was.
So you basically were you going in the ambulance and you'd see the whole car wrecks and everything?
Yeah. I was actually more focused to working in the hospital. Okay. So the Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital where I worked became a trauma center while I was there. And so I would assist in the ER and then carry through. I also cross-trained into being a surgery OR tech. Okay. So I would bring patients through the ER into the OR and assist. So
it really did help in your clinical background.
Yeah, absolutely, and it helped me, see kind of the inner workings of a hospital and have a pretty good understanding of, medicine and nurses and how they play into the social structure of a hospital. I also got on an advisory committee. I was like the youngest person on an advisory committee at the time. I think I was 19 for Santa Barbara Cottage, and but that really helped understand the business side of the hospital as well.
Okay, so you got the clinical and the business side.
Mm-hmm.
And then, actually, I was looking on your bio. You actually, did you play for Sac State?
Soccer? No, I wanted to. I wanted to. I loved soccer, and but unfortunately for me, I was one of these kids that had to work all through college. Yeah. So I worked 40 hours a week, if not more, and also went to school. So that made it really hard. But I wanted to definitely for Sac State.
So you almost been you could have been a professional.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
People are actually paying attention to soccer. And actually, this was the stumper from the first. What is your favorite movie?
Oh, so my favorite movie was Big, which I don't know if anybody knows that movie with Tom Hanks, right? So I got teased a lot by my siblings about this when I was little. But you know, I was fascinated by that movie, and it took me a long time to realize why I was so fascinated by it, because it's this idea of a kid becoming an adult overnight and then having this huge business career and doing all these amazing things. And I remember when I was a child, I just couldn't wait to grow up and sort of start my life, sort of start doing things. And so I just loved that movie for that reason.
So there was the makings of an entrepreneur.
Yes, yeah.
And then also, let me ask you this: what was your aha moment that inspired you to start up StemExpress?
You know, I always loved business, and I felt like. Sorry, I keep turning my back to half the room. I just realized this. Is that, you know, I always loved business and felt like, you know, I knew I wanted to do something in the business field, but I also loved medicine, patient care. I wanted to improve things for patients and people with illnesses. And so, you know, I think it was kind of just this, you know, bringing together both of those loves. You know, when I was working at Cottage, sort of the first time that I remember starting to think of what eventually would become StemExpress was when I was 19, and I was there, and I felt like I was starting to get involved with donor services. So for people who don't know, you know, obviously a lot of people have on their driver's license that they're a donor. And last time I checked with the Donate Life campaign, I think about 80% of Californians have that sticker on their license. And so I saw a lot of people come into the ER. We had a pretty packed ER. We had probably 10 to 15 deaths a week. So I was around it pretty often. And a lot of times donor services could not use organs from donors because they didn't qualify to be a donor. So even though the person wanted to and consented and so forth, certain regulations, certain backgrounds of the individual would exclude them. And some of them were really simple exclusions that you just think this person, you know, totally healthy donor, it'd be perfect, it could go out and benefit all these other lives. And so at that point, I started thinking there has to be something that can be done for people who want to be organ donors, but there's no option for transplantation. And I knew a lot of people in the research field at UCSB. I knew some up actually in the Bay Area already that were needing tissues that couldn't get them. And they would almost have to wait for the transplant banks to have something that didn't work for them. But the issue was the transplant banks wouldn't even collect it if it didn't. So there was just this hole that I saw that I felt like needed to be bridged. And that was probably the first time that I actively thought about that piece of it and how to try to bring the two together, and given grants to folks that were looking specifically at embryonic stem cells. And then at one point, I don't know how the feds pulled this off, but they basically ended up pulling in a bunch of embryos through the NIH, and then it became this big national story. You know, what are we going to do with these embryos now? Researchers need them. Who's going to get them? And it just became this political football that got kicked around a lot. So there are lots of places you can get stem cells from. So whether it be, you know, bone marrow is a huge one. Probably the bone marrow is probably our biggest source of cells like that. But umbilical cord blood, adipose, people are finding it in dental pulp nowadays and teeth. I mean, there are just a host of areas. But, I mean, definitely as you see kind of through embryos or fetal tissue, it has, you know, it's in a kind of huge growth cycle. So you see a lot of cells. But comparably for us, because we collect umbilical cord blood from a couple of hospitals, and you know, what we might get from an umbilical cord blood is probably 1/10 what we would get from a bone marrow. So even though you're dealing with kind of the beginnings of life, so to speak, the cell yields, you know, can vary pretty drastically.
So it's really a misconception then. But
I think it's where the source started, and so I think that's why a lot of attention got focused there. But yes, it's absolutely a misconception that it's the only place to get stem cells.
Did that really hamper stem cell research out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the NIH getting involved with embryonic, you know, like with embryos, it sort of brought something sort of front and center because, you know, constituents and everybody wanted to decide what would happen with these, and then people's religious beliefs get involved and emotions get involved and it gets heated.
All right, so now I'm going to go back to my script here. So And I'm just imagining you're like in your apartment, you got $9,000, or your home, you got $9,000, and I want to start this business. Like, tell me how you started this, and
Yeah. So, it's crazy looking back at it. I mean, it was really crazy. I wanted to do this, and I thought that there was definitely a need for it. And it was a huge gamble. I mean, I remember in the first couple of months, I mean, our very first month in business, we had started working with the university on the East Coast. It was like our first client, and I think our revenue for the month was like $800. I was completely ecstatic. I mean, I just thought, oh, great, we like did something,
Cash positive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we were cash positive in our first month, which was great, because I wasn't paying myself anything. It's easy when you're not paying yourself anything.
Right.
It's you can do that. But I remember buying like these styrofoam boxes that we ship every day now, all the time with, and they're like $3 a box. But you have to buy them in these huge flats, so I had to spend like $600 on boxes, and I thought, well, there's all our revenue just went out the door, So it was tough.
How did you get did you go to a hospital and say, and you'd like to collect your stem cells, or?
Yeah, it's, I started off like with clinics and doctors that I could, knew from just my background, and, talk to them about, what oftentimes is sort of viewed as biohazardous waste of a hospital has a real benefit to the research industry. So, for example, most hospitals throw out tumors. Like after they do a resection and a surgery, it gets thrown out. A lot of research is being done on these tumors, and researchers need them, but end up with limited access. And so, and specifically with rare types of cancer, there's extreme limited access there. So, it took some work. I had to have some believers early on that, that I wasn't crazy, but it sort of took off, and I think kind of proved its concept, and then it was a lot easier. Once particularly I got the first, major hospital on board, it sort of followed suit, and then it was easier to get a lot more.
So you really had to do sales jobs to the hospital.
Absolutely, or the physicians or the doctors. I mean, I think it was in concept. In concept, when I say that, a hospital throws something out and it seems so simple, right? We'll just collect it. Well, there's consents, there's major consents, there's hospital consents, there's legal, there's whose liability is it, whose staff's doing it. I mean, it just goes on and builds from there. So, it took some believers for sure.
Okay, so I read you started it from your house.
I did.
So you just get a couple of refrigerators and
no, no. So realistically, for probably let me think. The first office we had opened was 8 months into the company. So prior to that, I mean, everything we did was just drop ship. So, so we would collect on sites, we would ship directly to, there was no storing anything at all. So that was helpful. I mean, and I started training and kind of cross-training people early on in collection, and, thankfully, because I was driving all over the state of California, and it was
just you going to the hospital?
It was me going a lot lot of places.
Putting the box stamp for the
Yes,
stamp.
yeah. I know.
Okay.
Yeah. It really was. It was a lot of, I know I at least had probably 10 months where I didn't sleep. It just seemed like, so. Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess you started with 9K, and I read a couple things on how you actually, how you actually got your first, funding for your project. So, and I think you talked to some investors, and then you decided not to go that route.
Yeah, so it's the company's all self-funded. So we didn't take on any investors, and early on as things sort of took off, and what I was still surprised by and have been surprised by for the last 4 years is we don't have a formal sales team. And in the beginning when things took off. So much of it was word of mouth. These researchers, they talk to each other, they know each other, they communicate with other folks. And so pretty quickly, word kind of started spreading, and, papers, people started publishing papers and would reference us in the papers and say, this is where I sourced material from. And so we'd hear from folks that way. And, it was just sort of keeping up with the demand. We spent a lot of years just keeping up with the demand of it.
But I understand now, you actually now are able to to label the word, it sounded like first initially when you got it, you got something, you sent it. But now,
That's it.
But now you could actually label, give us more information about what you're sending.
Sure, yeah. And our production manager, Barb's here today, so I'll do my best to to say it as it is. But I was going to say, so when I started the company, it was all shipping directly. We got a lot of pressure early on where researchers would say, we want you to extract something like RNA, DNA from the sample. Can you send us it in this? Can you do these things with it? And we had to tell a lot of people, no, we couldn't. It was my plan when I started the company. I knew we would add a laboratory component to it. I knew we'd have a lab at some point. And I thought probably 3 years, something like that. Well, when we really opened our first building, we opened the lab, which was at about 8 months. And at that point, we were just doing kind of plasma isolation, starting to get into doing some genetic work with a company and dabbling a bit. And it that was not my background. That was not, I was never a lab person. I was always more patient hospital, anatomy, physiology, loved all of that, but it was not on the research side of what's going on in the lab. So, we just sort of kept stumbling and adding things to our portfolio of what we do. So today, we have a full cell isolation, cell culture lab. We grow a lot of cells, we expand cells, and just, isolate tons of different, B cells, T cells, NK cells, CD34s, 133s, I'm looking at her. But we just do a whole ton of different types of cells that we isolate that the researchers need. We do a lot of custom projects, custom isolations, etc.
And then, and so in researching my script for you, so you're loved in Placerville for bringing business there. So why Placerville?
So I had just moved there about, I don't even know if it had been a year when I was living in Placerville when I sort of decided now's the right time to take the plunge. And it's interesting because I had broke my leg, and it had, I was talking about this on. Yeah, I had broke my leg, and so I was laid up for a while, and it really got me thinking, when am I actually going to do this? When am I going to go through with this? I've been wanting to do this for a while. Like, when should I just take the plunge and do it? And so it was right after basically my leg healed that I decided to do this. And so because I was living in Placerville, I thought, well, I was commuting, flying a number of times per week with my old job. So I was ready to not do that, and decided, well, I can always move it to Sacramento if I need to, but I'd rather start it up here. And I'm really, really glad we did because, like you mentioned, I mean, it's El Dorado County has stepped up in a huge way for us over the last 4 years. Marshall Hospital is, we have a really close partnership with Marshall Hospital. They created a research board this last year that I'm on, and it's all about bringing, cutting edge services to Marshall Hospital, which is fabulous.
And I think one of the things I read is you were looking at investors, and they said they wanted you to move to the Bay Area.
Oh yeah. So I gave a speech at Shriners, and so as Rich mentioned, I was young and new to this level, I guess, of business. It was almost like a little bit of a curse of our success. But as the company took off, it brought a lot of people out of the woodwork that were interested in it. And I gave a speech at Shriners actually that SARTA had asked me to go and speak at, and it was this really short clip. I think they gave me a couple of minutes, and they said, you're just gonna have to bullet point everything and spit it out. So I thought, okay, well, bullet points, I guess we'll do financials, I guess we'll do client base, I guess we'll do, the types of clients we have. So I just gave these bullet points like, we're working with every major medical school in the country. We're working with big pharma clients. This is our revenue. I think we were at $175,000 a month, and we were like 15 months or 16 months into it. I just bullet pointed these things out. And afterwards, for like 2.5 hours, I had investors standing there talking to me about it and wanting me to sell the company to them, wanting me to stay on, wanting me to move into the Bay Area. So it was a lot. I learned my lesson a little bit the hard way then. So
good press to have. So
yeah.
How big is StemExpress?
So I think we're at about maybe 22. employees right now. So we fluctuate. Sometimes we bring on consultants for projects as we get them on, and we flux a little bit.
All right. And then so I think the last project they said you're bringing in like $500,000 a month.
Yeah. The last time when I talked at MedTech, yes, yeah, and those numbers can fluctuate a bit too with projects. I mean, we have a pretty consistent base now, but we get a lot of projects that come on. Part of we execute on them really well, which is why some of these particularly big pharma clients like us or larger companies, because they're used to trying to source samples and it taking them 3 years, let's say. And I think that's another key piece that makes StemExpress really unique is, I met a lot of companies, even like Novartis, for example, where they'd be doing these projects and needing a specific type of product, and they're sourcing it from every place that they can find, globally. But they're maybe getting in 14, let's say, blood tubes from these specific patients per week. And so pretty quickly we could adapt and shift. And so we started sourcing thousands of samples per week, which it allows them to take their, project timeline on their assay that they're working on that was supposed to be 3 to 4 years and shorten it down to 12 months. Wow. And that's really powerful in any business. I think that's powerful, but specifically to pharma who's trying to get a product to market really, really fast, that's extremely beneficial to them.
So when you start StemExpress, was there anybody else doing this, or were you kind of unique?
There was a kind of a patchwork of companies that were maybe doing bits and pieces of it. There's like a couple companies on the East Coast that source cord blood, for example. There's a company in the Bay that does cell isolation but doesn't procure any products. So it was kind of a modge-podge of companies, but I really wanted us to be able to go from beginning to end. I wanted us to start at the procurement, through the consenting, all the way through, final isolation of the cells and shipment. Because I think that for research, it's important to know, number one, that IRB consents are kept throughout the process, that the handling of the product is, done in a way that they can depend on. So I really like that kind of beginning to end platform.
So with that said, are you kind of unique in that, being able to, it sounds like you're almost like a turnkey solution?
I would say we are. I mean, I would say that, it's, I think that does make us unique. I mean, I don't see another company that has the portfolio that we do that kind of, does that bandwidth and that kind of beginning to end scenario. A lot of times they source it in from other places.
So then, which leads me to the question, what is your plan for world domination?
I don't know. It's, I'll tell you that I'm still, when I started, am extremely passionate about direct patient care. So I love working with researchers that, I feel very blessed because the projects we're involved in span from, AIDS to cancer, diabetes. We're never bored. I'm never bored in all the researchers we work with what they're specifically working on. Blindness. We have a whole host of it. Prenatal diagnostics. We do a ton of maternal blood, and there's some new test development that's been done directly from products that we've worked for and helped these folks get FDA clearance for. So we are really dabble in all these areas, which keeps it exciting for me. But to get into more of a clinical, so we're R&D focused, if that makes sense. To get into more clinical applications of things often takes a lot more money. And but in some collaboration we're kind of working on with Marshall, but we're trying to start bringing better services for patients, and that's a big passion for me, is how to increase patient care, patient services at these hospitals.
Okay. And it just dawned on me as you're speaking. When I first talked to you, I was thinking you're almost like I almost thought you had I want X, and you could order X. But it sounds like you actually have more of a project basis. You need, where you're almost more of you have more of a project type approach.
Yeah, I mean it's probably maybe 60-40, 60 project based. I mean it just depends. I mean we get companies that say, we think we've discovered something. We want you to bring in patients, bring in donors, and we want you to, maybe have them run on a treadmill for 10 minutes and then stop, and we'll redraw them. We want you to take this sample and put it in these temperatures first, and then take the next 10 and do something different, and the next 10 and do something different. So they're sort of using us as their R&D. To help us work on their assays and plug in the data that they need.
Okay, so that's one other way to look at sort of outsource R&D.
Yeah, and I think that, there are CROs, contract research organizations that have been around for a long time, but typically those organizations then turn around and have to source in all the product that they need from somewhere else, get it all in on site, and then start to do whatever protocol and assay that the researcher is asking them to do. Because it's all inclusive for us, we're going to source the product, we're going to bring it in, we're going to do all of it. So it's really just one set of hands working on it as opposed to multiple.
Okay, that makes sense. What kind of advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, right? I think that I would, I guess the easiest way to say it is I would just do it, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. I think that a lot of things have led up to where I am today. And, I used to be, I don't know about you guys when you were younger, but I used to be one of these kids that was constantly worried about making mistakes. So what happens if I step out on that ledge and it's a mistake? What happens if I, go to start up a business and it flops? I think that every mistake that somebody would call that is a mistake that I've done in my life has led me to this point today. So I think that, even stepping out onto that ledge and having maybe a different outcome that you didn't think would happen is going to lead you in a path, that you're headed. So I think it's, I really don't, think of them as mistakes. I just think that it's been my journey.
Learning experience.
Absolutely. And, if you read about, I love to read about entrepreneurs. I don't know about folks in this room. I love to read about people that have created, amazing companies, global change, all of these things. And when you read about them, they made tons of mistakes, tons. And I think people love to glamorize on the success of people and not talk too much about those mistakes. They want to focus on the fact that they, did good and went on and were successful. And but it's I love to read about the mistakes. I really do. I love to focus on kind of the errors people have made. I think that you can sort of link it together if you look closely enough and see how it got them to where they were. So.
People are reading about you as a successful entrepreneur now.
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
I'm going to take this time to take some questions from the audience. So, Brian?
Yeah, I have a two-part question. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
So my two-part question is, how much is a dead body worth? And if it's a lot, I know a guy.
Okay.
Or I could introduce.
That's
I
great.
could make more guys.
Oh yeah, I don't know how much a dead body's worth. No. So I mean, like a body as a whole. It's so there is a lot of. So when you look at like organs, let's say for example, so if we're collecting specific organs, we have like procurement fees and everything associated to that collection, but it's pretty nominal. So when you look at,
I always wondered, do you pay the hospital?
Yes. So for us, I think a kind of a good relationship for both parties is it's got to be beneficial. In hospitals nowadays are struggling so much that it really has to be beneficial for them to have it make sense. But so if we're looking at saying like collecting, a liver or collecting kidneys, it depends on if the person, had like lupus or cancer or rare types of cancer. But on our side of it, the collection piece and just sourcing out the product, that's not a huge area financially for us. It's not a big kind of area to make money, if that makes sense. Does it not? You look totally confused. So I'll try to give you an example. So for banks that collect tissue for transplantation, there's tons of money in it. just tons, because they're collecting tissue, they're sourcing it through kind of their tissue bank, and then shipping it off to, let's say, if it's eyes that are cadaverous, that are going to be transplanted into somebody who's, let's say, blind. Those prices can vary drastically, like 10 to 12,000 per eye for transplantable tissue. It's huge. So in tissue banks, there's just tons of money for it. Unfortunately, the researcher side of this, researchers don't have that kind of money. We're like in the less than $1,000 range. I mean, it's huge difference in margins. But part of it is because the researchers, if they're looking at, let's say, doing something for a degenerative eye disease, the FDA might tell them, oh, we see that you figured something out, that's fabulous, but we want you to source 50 sets of eyes. And we want those eyes to be mixed ethnicity, mixed age range, disease-based, all these different things. And so the researchers have to get grants to try to pull that money in to do the research. I'm still losing you, aren't I?
So the FDA says they have to do these certain types of...
Oh, yeah.
Why? What does the FDA have to do with somebody who's a researcher?
Yeah, so basically, if you think you've discovered something in research, and you're going to move forward to say that this should be, let's say, eye drops or medication, and you say, I think this medication now will help people with blindness. Well, the FDA is going to ask you to prove it, and they're going to ask you to prove it thousands, if not more times, depending on the application. So they're going to want to look at, and they're not going to just want to see Caucasians between the age of 20 and 30. They're going to want to see people that are 80 to people that are 10 to, mixed ethnicities, mixed backgrounds, etc., to make sure that, you and I, if we put the eye drops in our eyes down the road, don't have adverse reactions because one of us happened to be African American or some different ethnicity. They want to make sure that it works the same across all platforms. When you think, if I hate to say this fact, but it's true. If you've got the cure for cancer today, it would take 6 to 8 years for it to be on the market. And I think that's atrocious. And so part of sort of my original passion with StemExpress was I can only fix so many pieces of that broken puzzle. But if I can allow the companies or the pharma or the university to take that, 3 to 4 year window it would take to source product and bring that down to a year, I've done my part at least to try to shorten that window. And so that has always been a big area I've been passionate, at least the part I can manage.
Express is in the name.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So that's your way of making the world a little better place.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish I could tackle it all. I joke sometimes because my sister works in Congress and I'm not the political one in the family. So she has the patience and tolerance for that kind of stuff. And I can manage over here what I can manage, but it's not politics. Yeah.
What are some of the things you do as an entrepreneur to keep the vision alive for StemExpress? I know that all of us go through ups and downs, and entrepreneurs, a lot of downs and a lot of ups. Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned personal development, like reading about other entrepreneurs and how underlying their mistakes and learning from it. What are some things you did, I would say offsite, I know maybe you went out and just did things just to free your mind.
Probably one of the best pieces advice I got really early on was hire to my weaknesses. And it was the first hire I ever did. So, I joke about this, and I'm sure it makes my, bank a little nauseous when I say this, but when I first started StemExpress, I hadn't balanced my own checkbook in 12 years. I just didn't. I didn't really need to. I managed my money well. I didn't get into trouble with it. I hated balancing my checkbook. I hated looking at that kind of stuff, so I didn't do it. So the very first person I hired was a bookkeeper. Right? So because I knew that if I was busy trying to do that, trying to manage the money piece, trying to pay people, invoices, all this stuff, that just was awful for me. I didn't want any part of it. And so it was just, somebody said if you just hire to your weaknesses, then you can do what you do best. I see a lot of entrepreneurs and startup companies, they try to take on the whole ship. And I remember the first bookkeeper we had. I mean, to me, it was a big deal at the time. I think she was like $800 a month. How are we going to afford $800 a month? The first month of revenue was $800, right? But it was like 3 or 4 months into it, and we were growing more and more. And I said, okay, we're gonna do this. And the minute she stepped in, it freed me up to do what I was doing better. And I think that's you got to identify. I'm really big at identifying my own weaknesses. I like to focus on that so that I can say, great, how can I hire somebody like in our lab who's going to know more about it than I do? It's important to not be the smartest person in the room. It's to surround yourself by people that have those strengths and expertise that you don't.
That's great advice, actually.
Oh, Angela.
Yeah.
How much money do you have now?
Oh,
She can ask that.
she can ask that, but unfortunately I won't answer it. Angela, we'll talk after, okay? We'll talk after. Yeah.
You asked
That
the
was
internship.
a fabulous question, though, Angela. It was great.
One of the things you said earlier, you said your passion is to help with patient care.
Yeah.
Better patient care. What do you feel is the limiting agent or the thing that slows down good patient care, or effective patient care?
Oh, there's a lot of angles at that. From back when I was working in hospitals when I was 19 I do a lot of work with hospitals now. It's almost like certain areas have gotten worse, right? But the problems are still the same, right? So you have, the institution that's a hospital. You have now in California, hospitals can't employ physicians unless they're in administrative roles, like a medical director, things of this nature, or management roles, etc. So now all doctors are kind of independent contractors of the hospital. So you have this big separation between the hospital and the physician groups that come in. And now, of course, nurses unions and all these things have played a factor in that. But you have more pressure on physicians to work faster, harder, take on more patients. But you're also asking those physicians to stay up to date on everything that's cutting edge in their field and to go to conferences and to educate themselves. And so you see all these gaps. I'm still shocked by that. I really am. I get to a number of conferences per year, but it's not like I do them all the time. But I'm shocked when I come into people that, let's say, work in obstetrics, and I know more about what's going on in prenatal care and the cutting edge research that's coming out of it than they do. I think, well, there's something wrong with that picture. How do we transfer information? How do we pass that on, and how does that expand? I think there's a lot of areas of improvement that need to be done so that the end patient, is ultimately affected by that if they don't know what kind of new treatments are out there and so forth. I do. Yeah. My sister's a healthcare law reform attorney. So yeah, I think it's in our blood a bit, I think we've always been sort of focused on that in medicine and both really like medicine. So yeah, I do definitely. Yeah.
You said it was important to make mistakes. What's the biggest mistake you made, and what did you learn from it?
Oh my goodness sakes. You can hear my staff over here chuckling, right?
Should have just asked them.
Right, yeah, you probably should. I don't know about biggest, but I think that, okay, I'm going to frame this question. So last week I was the week before last, I was in a IP and patent meeting that SARTA was putting on, and it was for businesses. Obviously, they're looking for
Leadership series.
Yeah, exactly. So I was in this meeting and invited some folks, a colleague that I know in this field, to come with me, and he's had big jobs at a lot of big corporations, and has his own business now. Just sold 2 of his first products he developed, so he's doing good. And I asked him to come, and we sat through this meeting together, and the horror stories that were told were really hard for me to hear. Of people saying, oh, we've got investors that are coming in. There's a group right now that's looking at buying a product, but they're refusing to sign an NDA. What should we do? I'm like, I know the answer. You should kick them out. Do you know what I mean? That's awful. Why are they refusing to sign an NDA? And then the next guy would talk and say, oh, we started a business and we hired a CEO and they stole the whole company. I am one of these people that absolutely goes into the world thinking everybody has good intention. It's a blessing and a curse. And so, I've had to learn with business how to manage that. And I have so much more learning to do. It's just what it is. But I think that a lot of the mistakes that I've seen other people make or that I've been privy to as well is, I don't know, sort of believing everyone on their word, right? Everyone has the best intention piece. What I've learned to do better in the last 4 years is I have a great kind of group of people that are my sort of support network and my mentors. So, some of them run $200 million a year companies, and I'm really close with them. Some of them are more startup driven and have had different pieces. Some of them are attorneys. Some of them are CPAs. And I sort of collectively bounce different things off different people depending on what it is. I think that there is, I like to learn through them and so that hopefully I don't recreate the mistake. But it's being cautious is a good thing. And I think a lot of startup folks, I found it in this meeting too, a lot of people that are starting up businesses, because they don't know what to do, they kind of get plagued by indecision. Like, I don't want to tell this investor to go away, that they're just refusing to sign an NDA, because what if they want to buy me? And then they worry about that. But no, what if the money goes away now? How do I manage that? How do I deal with that? I find that if a deal is too good to be true, it absolutely is. If somebody doesn't respect your IP as much as they want you to respect your IP, that's a problem. So, I find that the clients I have, particularly because they're research driven, see that sort of structure, and really a good investor, somebody who's serious about coming in, is going to want to make sure you're by the book too. They're going to want to make sure that you're doing everything in your power to run a tight ship like that. And so if they don't respect that, I think that there's concern and caution.
You're going to basically, it seems like you're doing pretty well right now, so are you actually looking for investors, or are you just going to try to grow organically?
Yeah, we're just growing organically. I mean, I don't know that the day won't come at some point, but right now it's just all, reinvesting. I've been focused on that since the beginning, and just, when we have money, we just kind of keep putting it back into the company. We're in the process of, I was in a meeting today talking about spending a lot of money on like a software infrastructure, and I'm just like, I can't believe we're going to spend this kind of money on this infrastructure, but it's sort of what's needed now, and so, I'll definitely give a shout out for folks that are looking for banks or thinking about it. 5-Star Bank has been fabulous for us. We originally applied, so I had been banking, I won't say who because that positive credit, I'll tell you who, but I had been banking with a bank for like 11 years myself, and thought, oh, it's perfect. I'll go to them, ask them for a small business loan. They said it was a new business loan, and I can't remember how much we were up to at this point. I want to say, we had at least probably a couple $100,000 in the bank, really growing, all these things, and they said, no, we can't give you a loan because you're under 5 years. I said, why is it a new business loan then? I mean, what does the guy who wants to paint houses down the street do? Like, we're profitable, we have money in the bank, and I'm asking for a business loan? They'd give me like a $10,000 credit card. That was it. I was horrified. I thought, how can you do this? And so then I applied for an SBA loan, got turned down. Really? Still profitable, still doing all these things. I thought, oh my God, what do you have to do to get money? Now, granted, I did start the company in 2010. Like, the banks were basically closed, right? But it was, I ended up meeting a guy, Mike Rizzo, through 5-Star Bank.
Mike, yeah.
Yeah, and I met him through SARTA, and they made the introduction, and he said, no, we'll do this, we'll fund you guys. And I sat him down, and I said, I don't trust bankers. I've done this now twice. Both failed. It was a huge waste of time. And he said, no, we'll do it. And he got it done. He set his goal for like 90 days. I think he got it done in 70. And so they have continued to step up as we've grown. They continue to do AR lines, bank loans, equipment financing, and they just keep growing with us, which is fabulous.
I should have invited Mike here for this.
Yeah. He'll be bummed now. But yeah, so I became a believer in them because of that, definitely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's good. Any other questions? Oh, Monica.
Yeah. Like when we're done with something, like if we just need part of something, or We have biohazardous waste. So what I look at it like, there's a lot of things we can use sometimes. Sometimes there's pieces we don't need anymore, or blood samples that we only need part of, or something like this. So we have biohazardous waste. We keep very little amount comparably to a hospital. But when you look at a hospital that throws out tons per month, even if we can make a small fraction at reducing that, there's a financial benefit for the hospital, right, and for the environment. But also, again, these samples, hospitals are not set up to be able to say, oh, we'll source all this, we'll do this, we'll manage the IRB and the research project. This is just not their industry. So what we're really trying to do, and we've sort of, built this template out with Marshall and expanding it right now with Marshall pretty heavily, but now I've, contracted with 8 different hospitals, but it's kind of building sort of a template solution for these hospitals that kind of we can plug in and say, you're not going to have your own research arm. I mean, if you're UC Davis, you have your own research arm. You have your own university. But if you're Sutter, if you're Kaiser, if you're all these folk, you don't have that set up. There's no structure there set up for that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. So, if you were at your maximum demand, that is the demand of your service was being filled by you, how big would your company be compared to now? Can you grow 100-fold, 1,000-fold, 1-fold? I have tried to figure out sort of what the market cap for this is, right? It's really interesting because in isolated cells, it's maybe about 190 to 220 million a year in isolated cells. And it's, it is interesting because if you have to start looking more to tissue banks to capture what researchers are currently getting from tissue banks, and that gets really fuzzy there. For us, I know that we are going to expand in offering more, patient service related things, and a lot of the equipment that we have on site can actually cross over and do some things with the hospital. So we're starting to really, work in that direction a bit, and that I don't even know. I don't think anybody yet has figured out truly what the future of regenerative medicine is for a hospital. I think it's hard to capture that right now because there's new products and services coming all the time. So I don't know that there's a way to capture that. I wish I knew the answer. It'd be fabulous. If you know the answer, tell me. But yes, yeah. Yes.
With all the advancements in stem cell therapy, is that one of the avenues that you're looking into being more on that patient care?
Yes, and I have to give a plug to Donna, by the way, who does our marketing. She's fabulous. I just have to say this. Yeah. It was actually, before I answer your question, Donna, when you had asked earlier about sourcing things out, I think it's important again to find those things because we all do it. Like I created our first website. I did. I created it on my Mac. I was like, here it is, 4 pages. And that works, like, for the very, very, very beginning. But then, growing that, expanding that, doing these things like Uptown Studios does. I mean, you have to start to partner with people that can help you do that. So, back to your question. Absolutely. I would love for us down the road to I have a lot of big ideas. I'm trying to think which ones I want to share here on Google. Is that, I absolutely envision us being directly involved with patient services for essentially what people would deem stem cell treatments. I mean, that term gets thrown around a lot. You can buy face cream on eBay. That's stem cell treatments, right? I don't know how they call it that, but yeah, it's like, you can do, but real, very much focused towards isolating cells from patients that can be used again on that patient. So, I definitely see that in the future for StemExpress.
One more question.
Yeah.
So on that note, do you actually do the cell differentiation in-house, or do you just isolate the stem cells, pluripotent stem cells, and then just have the researchers actually do the differentiations, or do you do any of it in-house?
So by differentiating, give me an example of what you mean.
So if you take a stem cell, pluripotent stem cell,
Yeah.
do you actually I guess, add the necessary factors for the cells to go in the direction that you want them. For example, create, islet cells.
Yeah.
Do you actually do that in-house, or can you actually do that in-house if you have the capacity, or do you actually just send them to, say, a particular lab that is geared towards differentiation?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, we definitely do some of that. I mean, I feel like when we're expanding cells or doing cultured cells, we're oftentimes expanding them past what they were originally into what they are now. So I would say yes. It depends. I mean, we have gotten like huge requests for like pancreatic islet cells is a big upcoming area. And, some of it, we get limited by equipment, right? So it's some of it's just, we're looking, we do a lot in the form of genetic research. And so DNA structuring, all this stuff. And we, for a long time, have just been the source, and our clients continue to ask us for DNA. Well, to buy a sequencer from Illumina, I can tell you have you have a research background. I saw you nodding the whole time I was talking, but to buy a DNA sequencer from Illumina is $500,000 to $750,000. So it's a huge outlay just to bring that machine in house. So it's where we can, we try to partner or work with folks that have the different pieces of equipment we're missing, and then sort of build as we grow. As we get the money, we bring these machines in house.
Okay, and then I do have one final question for you. Is there any help that we can do as a SAC entrepreneur, and any help that you can ask from us as a community to help you or help StemExpress?
Oh, I would love for all the people that are thinking about doing biotech companies to start them in Sacramento. That would be fabulous. I think we have I work with a lot of the biotechs locally. I was actually at a conference this last week in Canada and met with Vijay Kumar, who owns Syngene. I've known Vijay and Phil since they were just two people in like a tiny room. And, now they have a product that they've developed, a machine they've developed, and to see them at ISSCR, the International Society for Stem Cell Research, with their product, marketing it, and feel like we were a part of that, I love that. I love to feel like we're working collaboratively with companies in Sacramento to help them grow, and vice versa. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to really give the Bay Area a run for their money on this type of biotech research and engineering that we do. So
really, start your own biotech company.
That's it. That would be it. That'd be it. Oh, and donate. Yeah, Donna is telling me. Yeah. So for folks that are, Donna brings up a good point. So our on-site donation center, we're constantly looking for new donors. We're constantly also looking.
So what?
Yeah, don't donate your organ. Not like that kind of.
You still need them.
Yeah, you still need them. We'll just take part of your kidney, right? Okay. We'll just put the. Yeah. So yeah, is that no? So we do like bone marrow. We do blood. But you'd be surprised. I mean, we get people that contact us that say, I have a weird disorder. I have MS, but I really want to donate. Can I still donate? And we're like, please come, please, because we're constantly getting requests for like lupus and MS and, mixed ethnicities. We're constantly trying to expand our donor pool.
So are you thinking like bone marrow, or what do you?
Bone marrow or blood. I mean, we can do either one. So, or both. So we have some donors that do all of what we do as far as donation for bone marrow and blood, and some that just do blood or bone marrow, either way. Donna's sons did the bone marrow. I was going to say, did they give us a thumbs up?
They did.
Oh, awesome.
It was like maybe a 4.
Out of 10 on the pain scale?
They were monkeying around by 5 o'clock that evening.
Okay, so Donna's sons came up and donated bone marrow when they were back from college, because we pay our donors, which is great. So she's like, I'm sending them up there. They need money. They can go up there.
Lots of money. I got it.
Yeah. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here's this is our appreciation.
Oh.
And it's actually the wrong day. It was actually for last month.
Right.
But this is actually crafted by
an
active duty Marine Corps pilot. Actually, he does this on the side.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much.
So talk amongst each other, see if you guys can help each other out. And again, thank you for